Hello everyone. We are going to go through now our PowerPoint on rights, responsibilities, and citizenship. So we're going to be talking a lot about leadership. We're going to be talking about how our government is set up and some of our rights and responsibilities as American and Mississippi citizens. So some questions I want us to lead off with. What are our rights and responsibilities as Americans? As Mississippians, and what are behaviors that make good citizens? And I also want us to think about behaviors that make good leaders as well. So we live under a representative democracy. We have three branches of government. Our legislative, that's Congress, broken into the House of Representatives and the Senate. They're in charge of legislating laws. The executive branch, that's the president and vice president, and the judicial branch, which that's our Supreme Court, and their job is to really interpret the legislative agenda, interpret the laws that are created, and hold them up to the best of their ability. So we're going to click here and watch a video. Excuse me.
Hi, can I ask you a question? Okay, good luck. Can I ask you a question? Who represents you in your government?
I really don't know.
Do you know the name of your senator?
I really don't.
Okay. Who represents our government?
Okay, that's the video
Jeez, that's
that
a
I'm
good
going to
question.
ask you to watch. I'm not going to watch all 12 minutes here just because we're going to watch this in class as well. So that's the one you should click on. I'll send you the link in the email. So where did representative government come from? Well, it began with the Constitution and the Bill of Rights in the late 1700s. Those were very important documents that helped establish and found our nation and our government. Mississippi, as a state, also has its own constitution. So as American citizens and under the Constitution and Bill of Rights, some of our responsibilities are to vote. We have a responsibility to get out to the poll and vote for who we want to represent us. To serve on a jury, once you turn 18, you're entered into a system where you can be called to serve on a jury. And this correlates to a right as well to be judged by a jury of your peers. So this is when somebody goes to trial. Somebody has been accused of breaking a law and they go to trial. And this jury, this group of their peers, listens to their lawyers and listens to the lawyers of the person being accused and of the person accusing them. And then they decide if they're guilty or not. We have a responsibility to petition the government to change if we see something that we want to change. This can be through calls to our representatives, to calls to our senators, or other people that represent us in government, or signing petitions to add new laws or change laws. We have a responsibility to pay taxes so the government can use that money to do good things for the rest of the citizens. And we have a responsibility to respect laws. This is a silly picture, of course, of a police officer, cartoon police officer, but represents that we have a responsibility to obey the laws that are provided for us. So on the other side, some of our rights are connected to some of our responsibilities. One of our rights is the ability to vote, and that has changed over the years. At one point, it started that only white males who owned land were allowed to vote. Then it was incorporated to all white males were allowed to vote, then women, then African Americans. So we've had a long history of deciding who and who isn't allowed to vote, and now all American citizens are allowed to vote, but there are still some restrictions that we know about that happens with groups of people that are denied access to voting or made to follow unfair rules in order to submit a vote. Free speech. So this is your right to speak freely about your government. If you have something critical to say in America, you are allowed to share that. In some countries, like in North Korea, if you have something critical to share about the government, you're not allowed to say those things. They will not allow it. We're also, another right of ours is to be judged by a jury of our peers. And another of our rights is to practice our freedom of religion. So we have the opportunity to practice any religion that we choose in America. And another one of our rights is to be protected under the law. So what can we do if we disagree with something that our government is doing? Luckily, the Constitution and legislators and leaders in the past have set up ways that American citizens can respectfully disagree with some of the decisions that our leaders have made. One of those ways is to protest or march. This is a picture of the Women's March on Washington, which actually happened this past weekend. And these are all women who have decided that they don't feel like the executive government or really any branch of government is allowing women to succeed at the same rate as men. So they're protesting that women have not been treated fairly under the law, as is what we said earlier is one of our rights. So this is how they're showing that they disagree and that they want change, is through a march and protest. You can also vote. You can vote your representative out of office when their term ends and vote somebody else in. Another example of a protest, this was a sit-in that happened to protest unequal treatment of African Americans in our country. These happened all over the country where people protested that African Americans weren't allowed to sit at the lunch counter or in particular areas of restaurants, or even enter particular restaurants or establishments. So another form of protest. You can also run for office when you turn 18. If you decide that you can do it better, you get a petition, get people to sign it, do some paperwork, and you can run to be a representative. So we said that one of our responsibilities is to pay taxes, and I want to know what those taxes are used for. Some things are to pay for health care. So if you do not have insurance, but you need to go to the doctor, sometimes there are people who don't have insurance, but they have to see a doctor, but they can't afford it. So they go to the emergency room of the public hospital in their city, like UMC. And oftentimes public hospitals are never reimbursed for those visits, and we use taxes to help pay for some of those services for people who don't have insurance. Taxes are also used for schools. So that's how we fund Jackson Public School District, is through taxes that citizens who live in Jackson pay. And to help with things like roads and pipes and everything we've seen going on with the city, they are using taxpayer dollars to help make our city a better place. Okay, so let's talk about who our representatives and leaders are. And first, I'm going to ask you to come up with a list of characteristics that make great leaders. Some of the things that I've thought of are passion, honesty, collaboration, vision, empathy. And this is a list of all the different people who represent us. Mississippi has 2 U.S. senators. We have a president. We have 122 state representatives at the state level, 52 Mississippi senators. That's at the state level. We have a city council. The city of Jackson is broken into wards. Each ward has a representative that sits on the city council that helps the mayor. We are represented by our governor, by our mayor, by 4 U.S. representatives. So U.S. senators and U.S. representatives, they actually do their job in Washington, D.C. So they go to D.C. to help write legislation, pass bills, pass laws. And then we also vote for judges. In some states, judges are voted on, and in some states, they're appointed by someone like the governor. So when times come for you to vote, one thing you should ask yourself is, do the people who represent me, my senators, my president, my state representatives, my governor, my city councilman or city councilwoman, my alderman, my alderwoman, my state level senators, mayor, my U.S. House of Representatives, or judges, do these people have these characteristics of leaders? These people that I'm voting to represent me, are they passionate? Are they honest? Are they collaborative? Are they visionaries? Are they empathetic? Things that we need to ask ourselves before we decide to submit a vote for them. So we've talked about We talked a little bit about federal and state levels and city levels, city, state, federal, federal. So let's talk about who represents us at a federal level. We have 2 U.S. representatives for Hinds County, Jackson area, and then we have 2 state U.S. senators. We have 4 total, I believe it's 4 U.S. representatives, but 2 represent the majority of us who go to school at Power APAC and live in the Jackson area. Congressman Benny Thompson and Congressman Greg Harper. Greg Harper is actually about to retire, so you'll begin to see people who are going to be running to take his spot. And we have 2 senators, Senator Roger Wicker, Senator Thad Cochran. Thad Cochran may also be retiring this year. It hasn't been announced yet. But he may also be retiring, and people would be running for his spot as well. I'll send links to these. Basically, it's just to the website where you can look up some of your House of Representatives. Paul Ryan is the Speaker of the House, Republican leadership, Democratic leadership, and you can find a lot of neat information about all the different U.S. representatives here. And same for senators. Yeah, as a source, that Wikipedia page I checked on, and it is have good information. And here's just another website with all the different senators that we have, and you can click on their websites and go check them out. Okay. So that's our federal representation. At a state level, we're represented by the governor. If we click here, it will take us to the governor's website, and you can read about him and see some of the things that he prioritizes. We have state representatives. Those people do not work in Washington. They work in Mississippi, and they go to the Mississippi state capitol. And you can come to this website and take a look at the House roster. That's everybody who sits in the House of Representatives. You can see what district and party and their email if you want to send them an email. Let's see. State senators. This is going to give us, I think, a list. Oh, no, that didn't work. That you should be able to find state senators also on this website, that the Senate roster senators that the U.S. representatives is linked to. And let's see, what do we have here? These are some census maps you can click on and find your district. And these sort of district maps that we have here. Those are what's used to decide who you get to vote for, where you vote, and what district you live in. So we talked about federal level, state level, and local level. These are all members of our city council. Virgie Lindsay is the city councilwoman for Ward 7, which is the ward that Power APAC exists in. Here are all of the council men and women and our mayor, Mayor Lumumba. So you can go to his website and you can read about him, read his biography and some of the things that he cares deeply about and wants to work hard to change Jackson, and can also on that same site go and look at find your city council man or woman and read more about them as well. Melvin Priester, Virgie Lindsay, DeKeither Stamps, Ashby Foote, Kenneth Stokes, Charles Tillman, and Aaron Banks. Those are all the members of our city council. You to vote for them, you have to live in their ward that they are representative of. All right, so takeaways from our lesson. As American citizens, we all have rights and responsibilities regardless of our gender, race, our income, or where we live. And they are deeply connected to one another, our rights and our responsibilities. Remember, we said trial by jury, protection under the laws, vote, First Amendment, practice religion. So those are both rights and responsibilities in some ways. Our type of government is a representative democracy. This representative democracy exists at the federal, state, and local levels, where our government is based on the principle of elected officials representing a group of people. One other takeaway is that responsible citizenship and high quality leadership are critically important in order for our government at all three levels to be successful for our communities. So I want us to really think about the characteristics of leaders and why those are so important when we decide to go vote. So some things to think about. I want you to remember that Americans have the opportunity to disagree with their government or their representative, and that there are opportunities for us to show our disagreement through protest, through petition, through voting, and think about all the different ways you may have seen that carry out in history. So take a minute, write 3 questions you still have, and in class we're going to do some independent research on our own for those questions. So that's the end of our PowerPoint, and I will include links to the video in the email. Thanks.